Without further ado, Jonathan Ascencio, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. Commendable intro. Wow.
Dude, we're so excited to have you on, man.
I could feel it. I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate it.
You're our first guest. This is like a big deal.
I know. I could feel the energy in the room. I'm honored to be here, truly, because I know it's not every day you get to have a conversation that could really impact people's lives.
And I think you're like the perfect person for that. You really are. I mean, just talking with you before the podcast, man, we were already getting deep like immediately. I was like, how's your day going?
We had to stop just to go, all right, save this for the show because we're going to run out of stuff.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do, what your goal is in life, and anything you got.
All right. Let's see. So what do I do? Currently studying to be a RN and working in that field, working with behavioral therapy and essentially people who have varying diseases similar to autism or including, and just kind of dealing and navigating that world for them to have a better life so far. Things I want to be, I mean, that's a pretty long list, but one of them is an RN. I am a man of faith. I am a Christian, and I've come to grow into that the past couple of years a lot, and it's really changed my life for the better. So I'm excited to talk about what we have here today.
I want to dive into that deeper. So for me personally, my faith was I was shown it from the time I was born, right? Mm-hmm. And for you, you've now found it and deepened it within the last few years.
100%.
Talk about how you've found that, I guess, new chapter of your life, mm-hmm. and the benefits that you've found in strengthening and creating faith.
So I was raised lukewarm Catholic. I think a lot of people are. And it's no shame, right? It's just that as a child, I don't even understand this. For to be honest, I didn't have a desire to understand it because I didn't know what it could do for me. And my family wasn't necessarily practicing. They would maybe go to church on Easter and stuff like that. I was baptized as a Catholic when I was young, but still, like I was saying, it's really about relationship. It's not about religion, right? So I had, I guess, an uncanny childhood. My parents had separated when I was young. I was about 6 years old. And after high school, I was in a really lost place, and I didn't feel like I knew where I wanted to go, and almost didn't feel in touch with myself, and my mom could kind of sense that. I ended up going into the Air Force after high school, spending some time there.
Why did you go to the Air Force?
Ooh, very good question. Very good question. I would say it was a mixture of I was running away from my family life while also running towards what I perceived as immediate independence financially and emotionally, that I can start my own life as a young, in my late teens, going into my early 20s, right? I think it's something we all desire as young men. Like, we want to go start our lives and be somebody. We want to be our own man and make our own decisions.
Absolutely.
And looking in from the outside, that seemed like the perfect opportunity to go start that in my life. I had already spent time away from my family home. I lived in Irvine on my own for some time. So I already knew what it was like to be independent, and I didn't really struggle with it. I always kind of embraced the tribulations and stress that came with it because I knew it grew me as a person, right? Like, I actually like failing because I realize all successful people have failed more than you. Like, every single one of them. That's why they're successful, because they failed more than you.
They've also given themselves the chances to rebound more than you.
Right. And I don't want to come off as like this personality. It's like, oh, this guy is like, I really mean what I say. And it's not that I don't love it in the sense that you love a partner. It's that you love it in the sense I love failure in the sense of I know what it's going to give me. Whether it's the experience or the wisdom behind it. It's like, this is the price you have to pay to figure something out, right?
So how old were you when you decided you're going to go to the Air Force?
I was 20. I turned 21 in there. I had my 21st birthday in there. Not only did I went full active duty, signed a 6-year contract into a special ops position as a SEER instructor, which is essentially like SEER stands for Survivalist, Escape, Rescue, and Evasion. You're pretty much a survivalist, so you learn how to live in the wild if you had ever been lost, or if you'd ever find yourself in extreme situations like prisoners of war. So say you're a pilot who crashed down, didn't die, but now you were taken into enemy lines, like they would do things to you to try to get answers. The position of a SEER instructor was created to essentially teach those high-level individuals, pilots, or people who held valuable information to the military, if they were to meet their worst day, what tools would they have to get through it? So it was the only special ops job that also wasn't just straight up being like an assassin.
Yeah.
Like going
So what did that
like,
come
here's
down
war.
to? Yeah.
Yeah.
What did that come down to? I mean, to strip somebody completely bare of everything, their worst day. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like all you have is your mindset, but...
Precisely. I think that was the word I was looking for. Of even if I didn't realize it at the time, it was the beginning of a journey, an everlasting journey we all go through of developing our mindset. And that was an extreme version. I mean, I had always been attracted to extreme things, like physically when it comes to working out and like pushing myself to the limits, but I'd failed to realize until I was in there, there was a lot of like, I didn't actually gel with the people that were in there, and they essentially have to be that way to get their job done, right? So
You're talking about gelling with the people in the Air Force.
yeah.
So spoiler alert, you're 23.
I'm 23.
You signed a 6-year contract at 21.
Here we go. Story time.
You're not in the Air Force.
I'm not in
What's
the Air
the deal,
Force.
man?
So I got out on an entry level separation. All that fancy terms means that I pretty much was not there to the military. They like got my file and erased it from existence. So there's no negative or positive. Like I don't have any veteran benefits, but I also don't have any negative things on my resume for getting out.
So like no dishonorable discharge.
No dishonorable
nothing.
discharge, nothing like that. And that is quite a story. Yeah, I get.
Let's hear it.
Let's unpack that, because for our viewers, there would be limited times where I could communicate with you while you were still in the Air Force.
100%. Yeah.
And it was almost like he was speaking to me in code. Because there were things that he couldn't say while he had other people present.
Yeah.
And there almost always was somebody present, even if there wasn't somebody in the room.
Right.
And from what I know about the military, I mean, that is a huge deal to not fulfill all 6 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
You're correct. You're 100% correct.
And have that in your fine.
Yes. So I guess that's also, this is, when I look back, this was still one of the biggest pivotal moments of my life, hands down, when it comes to feeling lost, not knowing what I wanted to do, the mindset I had going into everything I felt. I had a victim mindset. I know we all struggle with it. Like I felt like, why is this stuff happening to me? Why I don't have a good life, blah, blah, blah. And it really turned into everything that's happened in my life is my responsibility.
So walk us through that shift.
It doesn't happen overnight. And having an environment as extreme as a special ops military environment with a bunch of guys that think a certain way definitely may speed up that process.
What did they think differently than you?
So when I got in, I graduated, I went through basic training. I had a heck of a drill sergeant. I had a early 30s master sergeant, which is quite unheard of. Like this man moved up the ranks very quickly, and he was a 3rd generation Air Force guy. Grandfather, full-time. Great-grandfather, grandfather, and him were all Air Force full-time. Oh, this, by far, to this day, it is the most disciplined, intelligent, and respectable man I've ever met in my life. Yeah.
Wow.
And I want you guys to realize the fear that comes with that. When they have a position of power over you that, like, if you don't obey, you go to jail. Like, that's the punishment for not obeying and directing orders when you are part of the military, because you become less than a citizen. Citizens have certain rights that you lose as you become essentially like government property.
How was your relationship with this guy?
Everyone's okay. It's time to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah,
everyone,
please.
Everyone is scared in basic training. I mean, I don't come from a military family. I had a couple cousins go through, but I never one of them went Navy and one of them went Army infantry. But I never actually had deep conversations before I signed up, because I honestly went in through the whole process pretty quickly. Like I said, I was trying to run away from my circumstances and I wanted to get into something new. The first night, we're all just laying on cement. Since we got there, maybe around 3 p.m. and it's now 2:30 in the morning, and we haven't had any answers. They're just wait, shut up, just wait. That's all you're gonna do. They threw us some MREs, which is military food, and it's an adult Lunchables.
Rations, yeah,
rations. Yeah.
Some gruel for you guys.
Straight to the gulag.
100%. I can't complain. There were some decent ones. They vary, just Lunchables. There's a pizza or but
I lived off that as a kid. Lunchables, man.
Right, exactly. The fear of the unknown is really loud in your mind when I was there the first night. So I'm walking you guys through the first day there at basic training in San Antonio, Texas. Also my first time leaving California, on my own. But I don't think that really sunk in until I was there for a couple weeks. I was like, this is it. I'm out here. My relationship with the guy, first night, once we got into the bunkers, I want to say it was maybe 2:30, and he just starts. I don't know what type of parents you guys grew up with, but I'm talking just full disciplinary mode of I'm yelling into your soul, and if you just look at me the wrong way, I'm gonna throw something at you. And and it's they're doing their job. It is jumping into the pool that you signed up for. An ice bath that you signed up for. And he says, take off all your clothes. Everyone. It's a room full of 45 guys, right? Ranging from 18.
We're talking everything.
Yeah. I didn't know yet. Ranging from 18 to 35. He's like, take off all your clothes. It's time to shower. Before you, he's like, you're not getting into bed dirty. And I'm looking around like my underwear too. I just met these guys. I haven't really said a word because it's almost, they didn't even want us talking to each other, right? And that helped 100%, like you said, taking responsibility of who you are. The point of basic training is to strip you of your identity and make a soldier. That's its job.
What does that mean?
You are Josh. You do certain things. You may even believe you are your habits. You identify with certain things, and people have a perception of you. Let's say Josh eats a lot and he goes through a phase in his life where he's not eating a lot. People are going to think oh, what's up with Josh? Why isn't he this and that? Imagine that happening to you in every aspect of your life. So you're not going to talk a lot anymore because you're not allowed to talk a lot and speak unless you're spoken to, right? You're going to be very meticulous and almost very self-judgmental of how you carry yourself because you're supposed to. You're supposed to walk a certain way, march a certain way, look a certain way, dress a certain way, get ready a certain way, and you're essentially not going to do anything unless you're told to.
And are these new habits that are forced upon you, correct me if I'm wrong, they're coming out of fear?
There's fear involved, but it's a level of respect, and it's also understanding this is what you signed up for. So I do also want to zoom out and say I'm not trying to bash on the military industry complex. It's doing what it needs to do to create the product that it's looking to create, which is a soldier.
I'd rather have a soldier that's strong than a soldier that's weak. But at the end of the day,
what do you mean by physically or mentally or spiritually? What do you mean by that? Strong or weak?
I would almost say in every single way. Spiritually, mentally, physically. You need all of that. But when you strip all that down, when you don't have your identity anymore, you guys have the same haircut, you guys dress the same, you guys, I mean, you're thinking the same way at that point.
Right.
And what do you have to you? Does that get tough?
Oh, 100%. I mean, they very emphasize that you're an individual. And like there's no sense of community. Like you're a soldier. You're just going to listen to what the higher above say.
Okay, so it's your first couple weeks. You're settling in there. This guy's crazy. Your drill sergeant.
I mean,
not crazy, but
he's not crazy, but
no, I mean he's intense. He's intense.
He's still just thinking about it, he's the most intense person I've ever met in my life, and it's not even close. Also, when it comes to intelligence and maturity, he was in his early 30s. He has a full head of white hair, like silver. Like I'm talking Dragon Ball Z when they get silver hair. If that's or like like he looks cool in it. He looks cool in it. I'm no exaggeration.
Yeah,
he spoke like 4 languages. He went to high school in Japan, and not to go on this rant about this guy, but I knew he was the real. I thought every drill sergeant was like that until you're there for a couple weeks. You hear other drill sergeants talk about him, and like they fear him, and he's the cream of the crop. Like he's probably one of the best personality, the best at his job that you're ever going to meet throughout the Air Force, period. So I look back and I was super fortunate to be under his class, be in his class as I went through that. And so as I'm going through, I mean, I'm performing well. I become their like PT leader, which is like the physical training leader. So I'm just the guy, when the drill sergeant's not there, I have to go in front of the whole, what they call a flight. It's just the group of people like in a square, and yell at them to do push-ups or sit-ups or stuff like that. Because if you were, and they base it off of how well you performed in the physical test in the beginning of like push-ups, mile and stuff like that. But I didn't care. Like I could tell there was people next to me that I slept to and talked to. They were like, you have a tiny little position of power over these people. Like, you should take pride in that, feel good. And I was like, I don't even want to be yelling at these people. I really don't.
Why?
Right?
Did you not believe in the way you were doing it?
So when I got there, I was looking for a level of discipline in my life too. I understood that my mindset, my victim mindset at the time was very negative, and I couldn't stick to something. I would try to tell myself to do something, it wouldn't work. I didn't have that self-discipline yet. So I knew like, okay, going into this place, it's going to force me to become really disciplinary because I have no other option. I have to obey. And then I realized, oh, I'm becoming a person I don't want to become. Or I'm just as important discipline is, what you are striving to become disciplined in is just as important. Wow. Which I had never thought about. Wow.
Yeah.
Like discipline isn't just this thing that, like, what are you looking to become? And if you really want to become that, you will, and it will be more of a factor. But if it's discipline forced upon you to turn into something you don't want to become, yeah, I'm a more disciplined person, but this isn't what I thought, right? We all have expectations going into big things in our lives, and when it's different, we find ourselves in situations.
Yeah, the discipline it's not an internal resource at that point.
Right. It's all external, and it's all in your environment, which is what I was looking for.
So you realize this. You realize like this is not for you. You know, this is not where your discipline is.
Yes. Like this is making me more disciplined, but it's creating me into something I'm not looking to become at all. And the mindset that came with that, like I didn't want to continue to nurture that. So I went through basic training. I actually did go up to my more vulnerability. I went up to my master sergeant and pretty much told him like, I don't want to be here. Like I can't.
This is the intense guy.
Yeah. I'm breaking down. I'm tearing up from all the stress and everything, right? And he literally looks at me. At first he's shocked because he's like, Ascencio, because you got to remember, he goes through a bunch of guys, right? He sees faces all the time. He literally says like, Ascencio, you're performing fine, like well, you're performing better than average. What's the deal? I was like, I know. I don't care how I'm performing. Okay, it means I'm able to do this little system well. But I had fear in my mind because I knew basic was basic and it was going to get worse because I signed up for a special ops job. And this was a group of 45 people in my class. 43 of them weren't in special ops. So they all knew like, this is the hardest it's ever going to be in the military for me. And then I'm going to go like live a I don't know if you guys know military people, like active or whatever duty. It chills out after basic. Like basic is the hardest thing they've ever done in the military because you're always being watched, how you sleep, how you eat. And then it all, it's still supposed to be there, the morals and the ideals, but it chills out because there's not 24/7 surveillance on you. I mean, there were night shifts. You wouldn't sleep through a whole night. There was like somebody would have to go watch the door. There was a pair of people that would have to go do that every night. So it was like an endless, there was never a break. Your only break was mealtime, which was 10 minutes from when you walked into the cafeteria. So you sit down and my mom still gets at me.
California labor laws, where y'all at?
Right? And it's like, you can't complain. You sign up for this. That's the big thing that they're going to push on you. If anyone wants to complain, you sign up for this. So I wasn't verbally complaining. It was internally like, dang, this is crazy. And that interaction I had with the master sergeant, he was pretty much like, he was successful at telling me, you're doing fine. He said, you're going to be great in the military. Stop crying, go think about it. I was like, okay, well, I can't go anyone to get out. So I graduated basic training. And I got to the special ops, the beginning, like pre-screening of what they had for SEER and stuff. And
how long are you in the military at this point?
Basic training is
it 4 weeks?
I want to say it was 6 weeks.
Okay.
I may be wrong, but like there's holes in my memory, when you go through trauma.
Trauma.
There's legit holes in my memory. I think I remember actually realizing that with other people. They could not remember the first night for their lives.
Wow.
Because I think of how much of a shock like it was. I mean, look, even before this, I had an upbringing. I think my dad was more intense than the average of his generation. So I already had been around some level of like intimidation and all that stuff. This guy was intimidating to the point you had to say, I don't have it memorized perfectly, but it was like, Airman Ascencio reports his orders. That's what you had to say. So myself could not even say that clearly from the level of like, because he's also 2 inches from your face as he's like yelling at you to say something.
Super intimate and also intimidating.
Yeah. But it's working. It's doing the job of like, do what you're told to do under pressure. Even though they can't physically, unless you like do something back, they can't like physically put their hands on you. You'd be surprised and be shocked of how much they can do just verbally and like getting into someone's aura and energy and breaking them down. I'll be honest, I looked into that man's eyes and I feel like I lost color or like a piece of my soul. Like he took some of it. No exaggeration. Like this is the only man I've ever met and I feel like had the power to like take some of my color from me. And because his eyes were black, like proper.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't mean to paint him as a villain or anything. I mean this was such a rude, proper awakening that I was asking for of what life could be and the realities of life. And
that's interesting. You said what you were asking for. You asked for that.
Yeah, I did. Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like a pity story. It's like, this is what happened.
Right.
And, from that came like a great transformation. So I didn't grow up, like I said, that was lukewarm Catholic growing up and stuff. My mom would every now and then talk about God. But I was actually surprised. The military is actually a really big supporter of people in faith. Any faith. Not just Christianity, but anything. And I was
were you around a lot of other faiths or religions?
Yes, but honestly, there was no one that stuck out to me that really practicing, like how I view myself and the relationship that I have in my faith. I could tell no one really had that light or like that spirit of that on them. I didn't at the time either. But so the reason the military is actually a really strong enforcer of people having a faith or having something, a higher power above them, is because if you look at it scientifically, a man who has a purpose greater than himself will go farther than a man who is just doing it for himself. That can even just be his family. But a lot of us were young males. We didn't have families yet, right? We had parents, but not like our own families of our own children and stuff, right? If you had children, if you wanted to lay down one day and not go to work, you could do that. If you had a 3-year-old, you're probably going to get up, right?
Right.
So it's the same idea of you're going to go farther. So I realized that's why they enforced it so much, because they were like, we want you to go as far as your spirit or your will take you, right? So they were creating strong people. And like touching back how you said, well, I want strong soldiers, right? I didn't finish the thought, I guess. They break you down to build you up. So they spit on you, break you down to make you a clean slate, and then build you into how they want you to think and operate.
Wow.
So it's
like calluses when you go to the gym.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, your hands hurt kind of a little bit at first, and then you get those calluses, and now you can lift anything.
I love that comparison, because how many people are very hardened after the military?
From my interactions with people who have been in the military, I'd say most.
Right. And it's not like throwing shots at them. It's they did their job. They turned into a callus. No one teaches you to dissolve that when you get out.
Do you feel that sense?
No, I wasn't in there. At least personally, I don't feel like I duration versus quality of impact. If you're dating a girl and you just met her for a month, but you've spent literally almost every single day with her, she can already have a bigger impact on you than a girlfriend you've had for 6 months, but you saw her like twice a week, right? So I don't want to say I wasn't there long enough, because like the impact really did pivot me into a new direction. It also forced me to become the man I wanted to be in the process. So once I graduated basic training, I got to the SEER place, and like it was like a pre-screening. Like think of it, you're gonna go through all these tests here, and if you pass, then you're gonna go to SEER school, which was in Washington State. And it got even worse, the mentality. I sat down, they sent me a video being like, stress is good for you because it hear me out, right? Stress is good for you. Yeah. And they showed, like, imagine an adrenaline video you would show to high school age boys to get them excited to sign up and do something. So there was helicopters, there was skydiving, there was bullets, there was a bunch of stuff in the video to hype you up, like a good commercial. Yeah, like a prime blockbuster action film. Right. And it was trying to advertise that stress is actually good for you, because it gets you to do things you would not be able to do without it. It's not wrong.
What's your take on that?
I mean, I was looking around like, these boys are saying this stuff with a straight face. This is kind of crazy, right? Saying like stress is almost this friend that you want to always have that's going to get you farther in life. And I was like, I mean, in very small moments, I know what you're saying, right? Someone pulls out a gun, you're stressed. That's going to increase blood flow and help you do whatever you need to do. I'm not disagreeing with that, but they were saying embrace stress as a mentality. I mean, I think even I can split a room of businessmen, I think, who would agree with that. I think there's like high level individuals that like being stressed or pursue. They don't want to feel at peace because then they don't get anything done. I think that also comes from having
taught yourself that the only way to fulfillment or completion of a project or something that you have aimed to do is by being in that constant state of stress, fight or flight.
100% agreed. Yeah. I don't agree with it, by the way. I see what you're saying.
I know. So what I want to get into is, where did you draw the line or find a new mode of thinking that differed from the propaganda being fed that allowed you to also go further?
Gotcha. It's a great question. So I flipped the switch while I was there at that like pre-screening SEER school. I said, I'm not doing this. Luckily in the military, when you go special ops, you're allowed to essentially quote unquote fail or quit out of a special ops job, and then you're just going to get thrown into like the regular Air Force.
So you're not out. I mean,
right.
They still drop you in there.
Exactly, right?
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know, right? I'm still in this. I didn't know if I could fully get out. But here it comes back to the thing of faith, where I said, like, I'm going to get out because I know what I'm worth, and I know, like, this isn't my purpose. And again, I'm not trying to hate. If it's right for certain types of people, then good for them. It offers a lot of security and like benefits that you may not find somewhere else. But I just had this belief that I'm going to figure this out without this, because I'm not willing to conform, and I'm going to figure it out. But I couldn't say that externally. So
was there a tax for you having to keep it inside?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that can get lonely, huh? Nobody knows.
Yeah, of course. And that's what I'm saying, that like saying it in this room in a podcast may not really do its justice of its impact. But when you're actually out there in a different state, I did not have a good relationship with my parents at the time. It really was and felt like me, because it truly, like, this is it.
Wow.
There's no support net. I wasn't, like, I knew when I did eventually get out and go back, I didn't even go back home. That's when I went and like went Irvine and stuff like that. But when I decided to create a plan in my mind, I said, I'm going to miss the mile mark. You have to run 1.5 miles under a certain amount of time. I missed it by a second on purpose.
1 second.
To fail out, yeah. On purpose. And
That's peak.
That's peak. There was a bit of fear, because there was like 1 or 2 people that were with me at basic, and they knew I was a good runner. And I hoped that they weren't going to raise any flags. But because I walked into a new environment with a whole group of people that didn't know, right? They actually did have my record though. So I was a bit, like, oh, is this going to work? And they came up to me and like, you failed out of SEER school, right? And they're like, I'm in my mind, I am hyped. I'm like, let's. And I'm having a cold stone straight face as this guy is telling me this. And he says like, we can give you another chance if you do this or that. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm just gonna like throw me in wherever you're gonna send me. I don't know also where I'm gonna be sent. So I find out I'm gonna get sent, become a munition systems guy. All that means is I'm putting the rockets on the jets for the next 6 years, 5.5 years now. And I was actually surprised. The level of like maturity and IQ, EQ and stuff was actually higher in the Special Ops Air Force versus when I went into like the regular job Air Force.
What was surprising about that? Like, why did it shock you?
Might get some flack for this, but it's what I believe. If the military is a bunch of second graders and the Air Force is the honors version of the second graders, you are still a second grader. So from the outside, it's like, oh, the Air Force. And I knew too, like there was some intelligent guys that I met in there that went into like the intelligence field, working in offices and stuff. But the overall general, like from my own perception, it got worse. The quality of the people around got worse. And I was like, I understand a lot that the people you're around is going to shape who you are. And I said, this is going to be my environment for the next couple of years. This is literally going to do this to my growth.
Yeah, just decline.
Right. Or, yeah.
So what did you do?
So I started looking. So I get sent out. This is all. Now I'm in Waco, Texas, at a base. And Waco, I think. Potato.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I mean, I've heard Texas has good tacos, so Waco Taco.
Oh, that is one thing, man.
Oh, put that on a merch, bro.
That's what I'm saying.
When I went to San Antonio for basic, you never go out. You're at the base the whole time. So I never actually saw the city until once after I graduated. Hey, man, I got to be real with this. At least in San Antonio, literally the first thing I noticed as I was now back in like a civilian car and driving down public streets, these people were big. And they know what I'm saying. Like, they were big. I was like, what the heck is going on? Probably the average. Yeah.
Mental, bro.
Yeah.
Everything's extra large over there.
3X's, dude, everywhere. My friends were laughing because some of them were like from there. So it was normal to them, right? If you grow up in that environment, they're just like, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, 3 out of 5 people I see are legit obese.
Okay, so you get out.
I'm
on the munitions.
Yeah, so I'm at a munitions base. Meet my new roommate. He's from Kentucky. Cool guy. Like, actually, he's a cool guy, but you could tell he has like 2 or 3 kids. I think he's in his early 30s. Like, this military thing is everything for him. And he's like, why would you? I know I cannot. If I were to express my feelings about it, he'd be like, why are you talking crap about the place that is giving me a sense of security that I've never had in my life? And it's changing my life for the better, which I'm not taking away from it. It is, which is why I still respect it for some people, right? But for me, I was like, I got to get out. So I would stay up at night and read through my contracts, try to find any type of loophole, feel like I was becoming a law student overnight because I had no choice while he was sleeping. Because I knew, like, if I showed anyone my intentions, I was going to get hazed and just, it wouldn't be a good thing. I think I was there for a total of like 3.5 months. And as I made some deep, close relationships, there were some people I said, like, dude, I'm getting out. Some very few people I told, and they looked at me. And I knew in their eyes there were some of them that also had the same thoughts, but they didn't have the faith that they can do it. Because there is actually no, like, you signed. You can't just be like, nah, I can't. Yeah. Period, right?
It's serious.
It is 100% serious. Like, anyone who comes from a legal background understands the weight of it, of what you have done. So I'm looking up things. I find out about this thing called a conscientious objector, just fancy terminology for saying that now that you've entered the military, you realize you're conscious, like, you don't agree with what the military does and what it stands for, and you're just going to write an argument to be presented in front of a judge to get out. But then I looked at the reality of, like, this being successful, and it said it can take years from the process of doing it. And what gave me a big glimmer of hope is I read this thing, because I was maybe in there, like I said, 5 months total now. You know how a regular civilian job has a 90-day probation period? Like, it's easier for you to get fired in this probation period. Essentially, you're not permanent. What's the word I'm looking for? Staff yet. In the military, it's 180 days, which is equivalent to 6 months. That day, I put in a day counter on my phone, like, counting down, because I knew it was pretty white and black of, if you're going to get out, your chances are much better before this deadline. Because once you become permanent, like the system or whatever, it's just simply harder. It's going to be a much bigger reason to get out. But I'm accessing all my areas, all my avenues that I'm finding out on how to get out. I'm going to the mental health and saying like, hey, some people get discharged on depression and like mental health stuff. So I went to at least go build and talk to what they call a therapist in the military, is like a chaplain. And they also kind of have like a religious background to them. I talked to this wonderful lady, wonderful African-American lady, who was a captain. And I pretty much spilled my whole heart out. I probably talked for like 45 minutes straight of my story of how I got in, everything. And she looked, and the ultimate conversation was, this is my story. I really want to get out. Can you help me? Because they're also just like a therapist. They're not allowed to tell anyone anything you said unless you're going to kill someone or kill yourself. Right? So I use that to my fullest.
Mandated reporter.
Right. Because I have been balling up this for so long, and I was broke down in front of her, telling her everything of how things are going. It's like if this empty blackness came over me when she looks at me, and I'm also like connecting with her. Like I said, I vibed with her really well. I felt like I could really trust her, and she felt like a good influence that I should listen to. She looks at me and she says, "Oh my gosh, you are so young. I love the way you perceive the world and how you were able to articulate everything to me right now. You would make such a good chaplain in the military." So, and I'm like, okay, wow. I get cool. I feel flattered that you said that. But the whole point I just told you was I need to get out. Like, I need to. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. You can smoke marijuana and look, on some cases, get out. Or like, I wasn't going to drink or drive or something like that. But that's the point that I was at. Mentally of getting out, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. No one's going to save me. 6 years of my life, dude. I was 20. I would get out at 26. I also found out I was going to get sent to Livorno, Italy. So I was going to be overseas. Complete life change.
So how long did you have between like the time that you were going to go to Italy and finding this out?
Finding out I was going to Italy?
Yeah.
I want to say I got out in September. My ship date was in early October.
Okay, so you have a few weeks.
Yeah.
That's rapid.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just the nature of the military, right?
And did you end up going to Italy?
No.
Okay, so these are the crunch time right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also the 6-month mark is coming up before the Italy. So I'm still in Texas, and I still know, like, this is it. After this chaplain tells me this, I'm just staring at her. And she understands. The conversation moves forward a little bit more, and she says, look, I'm going to word this to you very carefully. Just as a student will have to go to a school and have to do something repeatedly or like so extreme that the principal essentially kicks him out, you have to convince the Air Force through your behavior, through something, that the Air Force is better off without you. Because they've already invested, I don't know what the number is, $7,000 for you to go through basic training on, gear, food, and all that stuff. So they've already invested in me. Why should they lose their investment just because he doesn't want to be there? And I understood that. Like, that's unheard of. That's not going to happen, buddy. So when she said that, that's when I started thinking of those type of outlets, like, doing a certain thing. But I also had the patience or the recognition of knowing, dude, don't do something dumb that's going to save you and get you out of here, but it's like going to ruin your record. Whether it was going to be even like smoking or whatever. I also didn't want any type of mental health pattern on my record, because I knew, like, dude, no, you guys are going to, like, that could actually mess me up in the future trying to get a job. There isn't anything wrong with me. I don't want to be here. And you guys are going to put it as a mental health disorder or depression. And it's like, no, I know I'm not depressed. Even though I want to say at the time, if you guys understand what I'm saying, I was at a point in my life, I had no foundation. Family home wasn't great. I was still thinking about this long-term girlfriend I had shortly after. And I was at a point where I'd never had these thoughts before. I didn't care about waking up the next day. Never had those level of thoughts. And actually, like, thinking that way.
Dark.
Yeah. So I knew I had to make drastic change to get out. And I definitely associated my environment with those thoughts. So I knew things had to change. And I don't know, some flip switched in me. I just had this faith thing. I had this girl Liz I got close with, and she also like was saying all these things of how she thought it was going to be, because a lot of these people, I want to explain to you guys, come from like, they don't have another option. Some people are in there to get citizenship. Some people are in there from like proper abusive parents. Like they're whatever, no matter how bad the military is, whatever they would have to go back into would be worse.
It's worse. So it's their savior.
Exactly. Even though my life was bad at the time, I recognized I had other options. I wasn't a terrible student. I knew, that was another thing. I said, I'm going back to school when I got out. I said, hands down, dude, I was against it. Like, nah, I'm going back to school. That'll at least help me some manner, some way. And I just started walking around and I was like, I'm going to get out. And I wore it kind of like proudly on my chest for the people who knew. Obviously, I wasn't like, so I would purposely, I stopped going to my training. Like there's actual class training for the job where you have to go to a school building, and I just didn't show up. I was terrified.
So so I was let me. So wow. You not showing up. Obviously, this is an institution that
you have to obey.
You have to obey. Yeah. Right. Direct orders are orders.
Yeah.
Right. Jail, or it's like don't show up to school. Jail. You eat too long in cafeteria. Jail. You eat too fast, then you choke on food. Also jail. Right. Like it's that.
Yeah.
So you not showing up to class, not only is it a decision that you've made where you go, this is for the betterment of me, but at the same time, you're risking like your being.
I'm risking it getting even worse. And I was where I was, like I said, mentally, I was willing to take the risk. I told myself, if you guys are, because they could even make it worse just by keeping me in the Air Force, but then now they're going to make me a janitor or a cook, like the rest of my contract. I said, mentally, I said, you guys are going to go do that to me. I'm going to do the same thing there. It's not going to compliance, right? Then it would turn into jail. I also don't want to say like, at basic, if you don't obey, like you get another chance, you're not immediately shipped off into jail, right? It's like a law and order process. That could be the ultimate consequence. So I stopped showing up for class. It's a long morning. So the dorms, think of it, a college campus. Like there's a dorm, and then down this outdoor, like outside main street, at the end of the street is the schoolhouse. It took like 4 hours for someone to notice enough to come knock on my door.
Wow. That's got to be a long time.
Yeah,
no,
that's what I said. It was a long morning.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting there, right? In your own world, you think it's a movie about you. You think something's instantly going to happen. Like you think as soon as they take roll call and you're not there, like military police going to show up and shove you on the ground and arrest you, right? That's part of me what is going through my mind. I'm like, oh, I'm ready.
That's exciting though. I mean, you didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. And then it's 4 hours later that, some other like student or whatever who just graduated, like some nonchalant guy comes up and knocks, like, Sergeant wants to talk to you, like you were reported missing at school today. Like school, I think, was almost out by the time that this actually happens. So I get detention or whatever, start to get certain consequences, and I just take it. I'm like, okay. I didn't even have like a proper excuse. Like, why weren't you there? I was like, oh, I slept in.
Honest, bro. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't want to be there.
And I knew, so then I realized that wouldn't work. I had to show up because I can't remember specifically, but something changed where I knew like that wasn't going to work. That wasn't going to go according to plan. So I started showing up, and excuse me, let me backtrack a little bit. I have this first week of going to school and I perform well and I passed the test. At the end of each week, is there a test? And they call each week a block to move forward. So you're in block 0, block 1, block 2, block 3. You have to pass the test to move forward. I already had passed block 0. And then I did the like skipping school tactic. Went back. I said, I'm going to, the instructor says, if you guys fail 3 exams, you get washed, like you get kicked out.
Golden ticket. Ding, 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 ding. Let's go.
Though we all understood he meant like kicked out of munition systems program. Right. But I said like, they're not just going to kick you out the military because they already invested in you. But
that's a start. It's good enough for you, right?
Right. And I knew like, okay, well, I have to get into that position to get where I want to go. Like I have to end up in front of the principal to end up where I want to go.
All you have to do is prove that
they're better off without me.
Right.
So
I'm guessing you failed all 3.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I failed all 3.
How hard is it to act like you're dumb? Like, bro.
It's humbling.
I mean, didn't they think like, hey, this kid was above average and his, training. This guy was first week perfect. All of a sudden, he's not showing up to class and he's stupid.
100%, right? 100%.
What did they think?
So to touch on how does it feel to be dumb? I didn't care at all in front of the sergeants or like the teachers, right? I don't care what you think about me. It was a bit tough to peers. They knew what they're doing. So every single morning you line up in your blocks. Block 0, block 1, block 2, block 3. So if you wash out, I washed out of week 1. My whole class moves forward. They move to the line in front of me and I go back or stay where I am. And a new class meets me and the whole class knows I just failed. So you have to keep a straight face. People are going to have little whispers, whatever, about you. And it may be even more that I think they are than they actually are. Does that make sense? But it's embarrassing, right? Because it's like, oh, dude, I'm not retarded. I don't like.
Did anybody ever approach you directly and press you about failing?
No.
Okay.
Peer wise, no.
So did they kick you out of munitions?
So after the second fail, like you said, this retired guy, he's actually super cool. He did munition systems, I think 30 years or something like that. I connected with him like personality wise and stuff. I think he knew too. He went, when he saw I failed twice and he talked to me a couple of times, he went and looked at my record of how I scored in the ASVAB. So the ASVAB is scored by percentile. I actually like the way that test works because it's not like out of 100. It's what did you score compared to everyone else who has ever taken the test? So if you got an 89 on it, you're in the 89th percentile. You've done better than 89% of the people who've ever taken the test.
It's like a curve, like law school. It's like a curve.
Right. Yeah. So he went and looked at my ASVAB. And then he brought me into a room after class.
What percentile?
It was 89. It was,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. And I was shaking in my boots because I connected with this guy. He was retired. So he used to be a military sergeant. Though because he was an instructor role, he could still be that instructor role as a civilian. So this is my 3rd instructor now since I've been washed out, and we're in the snack room. And I don't know if I can fully trust him because he's not in the military. He's a civilian. So I feel like I could tell him because he won't, since he's not in the military, I don't know, he won't send me to jail or something. Like he's not actively in. So he's a civilian. So I feel like I could tell him, but I'm still on the fence. And he looks at me and he's staring right into my eyes. I want to say he was like almost essentially the same height as me. So he's like eye and eye staring into me. And he asked me, he's like, what's going on? He's like, it's illegal to it says in the rule book, it's illegal to not perform your best, essentially. Like, not to give it your best on the test. Like, if you're faking the results, that's against the law. You can't be doing that, right? And he asked me that question. And I'm just so taken aback, I don't say anything. And then he says, I know what you're trying to do, and you will not be the last person to do it. And I'm still just staring at him.
How did you take that?
My heartbeat was on 180. I don't think I said anything. There was no response. It was just, okay, like, you know, you got me. Now what? Now I'm in your mercy. This is the day before I'm taking the third exam. So this third would be, strike out. After the silence, he breaks it with essentially saying, like, you'll do good in the military. Like, look at me. I have pension, all this stuff. Like, it'll be a cool life. And I just keep nodding my head and saying, okay, and yes. And I think he convinced me. He convinced me to back out. So he kind of just took it as, I'm going to talk to this kid and, give him his last chance, make sure he doesn't mess up his life. That's how he views it. He genuinely meant that, because, like I was saying, a lot of people who go in the military don't have another option. So he views it like he's doing a good thing. Like, make sure this kid doesn't ruin his life. In the silence, he knew what my answer was. And he says, you'll never be able to join a military branch ever again. Reserve, Coast Guard, anything. You'll never be able to get a federal job. He's like, do you understand that? Yes, sir, I do. We don't have a finalized conclusion answer, but I guess he walks away believing he convinced me. And I know that because when I failed the next day, he's shocked. He's the one grading my test. He looks like, when I walked into the room to take the test that morning, he's smiling at me. And he knows, like, dude, you're going to get 100. Like, let's go. I think I got like 30%.
Wow. And can you describe this test a little bit?
All just memory based.
Okay.
Nothing
physical.
Nothing interesting. Oh yeah, no, nothing physical. That was all like during basic to get in and stuff and maintain your eligibility in the military. You have to be at a certain level of physical peakness. But remember, this is not special ops anymore. So even the bar of like,
this is for munitions.
Yeah. Special ops people obviously have very different physical standards than even just the regular Air Force.
Right.
So
where are you at now? You fail this third test. I mean, this means you're getting dropped down.
Right. And they immediately send me to like the room where there's like instructors.
Was it just called the room?
No, but it was just where all the instructors were and stayed, and they kind of just had me twiddling my hands for a while. And then he comes over and explains what happened. Like, you know how a cop has to say certain things in a certain way because it's their job. Right. This guy comes and says, you have failed because of this, that. Do you understand? Right? Reading me what has gone down. But I don't get an answer. What's next? He just tells me what's happened. Then he says, you're going to meet with essentially the principal of the base. Like, you're going to meet with the captain in charge of the schooling system.
So how, like, kid on Christmas Day to like finally last day of school, like where were you?
It hasn't hit yet because I still don't know. I can go in front of that principal and he says, I'm going to make you a janitor. Or like,
and that's got to be hard to get kicked out as a janitor. You can't do much wrong there.
Right. You got they're just going to keep dropping me into a lower like punishment, quote unquote, but they're still going to keep me in the force. But the whole point is I'm trying to get out. Right. So there's no celebration yet. It is 100%.
You're winning Judgment Day.
Yes. So I get in front of the judge and he's purposely being mean to me. Right. Like, you're messing up my stuff. Why are you like in my face? I shouldn't even see you right now. He had me standing at attention, which is not a comfortable position to be in, for like 30 minutes. And you can't move. Like, you got to breathe very subtly when you're in attention. And pretty much just goes off and says like, you don't know what you're doing. You think you're going to make it out there? Like, you're going to be nothing. Look at me. He had like some 3 degrees and I don't care. He said, look what the military did for me. Like, you're throwing away this opportunity. And pretty much just getting in my face. I don't answer when he says like, do you want that? Do you want to just go be a mess up? And like, whatever you were before this, you want to just go back to that? I'm screaming yes inside, right? Not that I want to go back to being a mess up, but that's what he's painted it as. It's like, no, I want freedom, and I now... He doesn't like threaten me saying he's going to send me anywhere else, but he pretty much just says like, you don't know what you're doing. I'll give you 3 days or something to change your mind. And then he gives me like detention. I just like salute the flag for a couple hours in the middle of the day to really reflect on your decisions, right? Wow. So then again, the next couple of days I have to hold strong and keep my faith and groundedness in that this is the right decision, no matter how much you're going to make me seem like a fool for it in front of my peers or give me these ridiculous consequences. To reflect on it, you got to stand true. And at this point, the few people that I have told, shout out Liz, they're looking at me crazy. They're like, dude, stop. Like, we don't want worse for you. Like, what are you doing? Things are not... I said, I'm getting out. Like, how are you gonna get out? It's not in your power. I said, I'm getting out.
You have total faith.
100%. This was the first time in my life I completely had faith. I didn't know how, which is what faith is, right? I don't know how I'm going to get out. It's not in my control. How could you say that with such certainty? Such certainty. I am getting out.
It almost embodies like this quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a man who says he can and a man who says he can't
are both right.
100%.
100%. 100%. So after the first set of scare tactics, they call me back in. This time they have me dress up in what they call your blues, like the suit that the Air Force gives you to come back in. Because like this is final decision day. Scare tactic again. I'm standing at attention. He has more sergeants this time around. Just imagine intimidating figures because they've had power over you like no one else has in your life. And he's trying to see if I crack. He goes on another tangent. Like, so you've thought about it. My answer hasn't changed. He even brings up like, what if I just go send you somewhere else? I said, I'm going to do the same thing. Thank God. I got a report. He told me, he didn't tell me directly, actually. Funny. I don't know if it's an ego thing because I guess it looks bad on him to like relinquish people, but what they call whatever, this sergeant in charge of this type of paperwork came to me and essentially told me my rights, or like said that you're leaving on an entry-level separation. Do you understand that you don't have veteran benefits? Do you understand you can never enter the government job or facilities or military? And I still don't know if that's true. I'm not interested, but
like if you wanted to walk down to like county hall, are you
no, I'm good.
Okay.
No. Yeah. So like
you just can't enter as military.
Yeah. I just can't re-enter. Like, so my profile was essentially, and I still don't know if this holds 100% legitimacy or they were saying this to like trying to reinforce, like, if you make this decision, you'll never be able to change your mind and come back.
Yeah, right. They want you to last minute change your mind.
Right.
Right.
It's like my file was never there. But the way they explained it to me is that if I try to re-enter, then like the file would show up and be like, no, you can't because you had an entry-level separation. But on any other terms, any other government or whatever, like there's no existence of my file ever being there. That's essentially like it's incinerated. That's how they explained it to me. said, I understand completely. And I guess he was just taken back by it. The guy explaining was like, okay. 2 days later, I get a plane ticket in my email.
Wow.
Wow.
A one-way ticket that I didn't buy. It was such a weird feeling.
And do your parents know?
I'm not even talking to my father during this phase of my life. He knew I went to the military through other means, obviously like finding out through family, but no direct communication. My mother, relationship at the time was on the rocks, but she knew I wanted to get out. I don't think she knew to the level. Actually, when I told her I was going to go to Italy, she got all happy and was like, oh, Italy? I was like, okay, you don't understand. I'm not vacationing in Italy. I'm going to go be stationed on a military base in Italy and work there for the next 5 years. That kind of, I think, a little bit like went over her head. She was like, Italy though. I was like, Mom, I can't leave the base. Okay, I think you have to be there a certain amount of time, and then on the weekends you can start to leave the base. And she could hear the pain in my voice, but I don't know if she truly knew. Like I said, like whenever you're low enough to the point you think not waking up tomorrow is easier than whatever you're in, you have to know it's not true. But when you're in there, it seems like the only reality. It seems like the only way out, right? No matter anyone's circumstance, if you get to that level, it's because whatever you're going through, you believe it's easier if you're just not here anymore. And I want everyone and anyone who's hearing this to know, like, that is not true. Things can always change, and they will change. Right?
Yeah, nothing is forever.
What was getting you? What was your light at the end of the tunnel? Because I feel like for me, if I was in a position like that, there's got to be one thing that I'm holding on to, whether it's like seeing my parents and my sister again. I got to go out and, you do that hobby you like to do, go take a drive on the beach. Like what was getting you through that?
Or did you even have a light? Like
the light was freedom. It was my faith of getting out. It wasn't even a particular activity or seeing anyone. It was like if you're in jail, just stepping outside and not having only 10 minutes to be there. You get your free will back. You don't have free will. And you cannot explain that to someone who's had that taken away from them. Right? People in jail, people in the military. I'm not comparing them both in both, but for the point I'm trying to get across of.
There are parallels.
Yes.
And I think the difference here is that like this was a free will that you didn't want this taken away in this way. Because like I think of CEOs, business owners, and they're taking away their free will because they're spending 9 to 9 p.m. working, or even 9 a.m. to midnight they're working. It's sacrifice, but it's like a self-sacrifice for themselves, or like you said, for a greater purpose. And like this was not your place to do it.
Any sacrifice that we voluntarily go under rewards us, right? Those CEOs are doing it because they make millions of dollars. I'm sacrificing my free will without a reward. I mean, the reward was like bad food and bad housing. Let me not say bad, but like low level. Okay. And I'm not trying to diss on them, but it's the reality of like, no, I can figure it out. I have other options. And I believed in that 100%. When I came with the news saying I got out, people just broke down in front of me. I was confused. Later, I had people come to my room. 7 different individuals came up to me and said, "How did you do it?" I went out too. I looked at them with such sadness, right? Because I said, these are people that didn't come until they saw it happen. And I was like, yeah, nah, you don't get it. You have to already believe that you're going to get out. That's what faith is, right? I didn't know it at the time, but I was looking at these people. Also the courage aspect. To go against the grain and something there. Everything is designed to go one way and you're going to go the other way. And you have to do it in such a professional manner of keeping it to yourself. It almost took me out. It was tearing me apart. And these people only now wanted to come to me and say, like, how did you do it? Because they saw it happen for me. And I knew that there wasn't, how it happened for me wasn't going to work for them. There wasn't a single solution to this problem.
That's what I love about your story, though. I mean, like, it's such a good reminder for anyone that hears this, that at the end of the day, you need to believe in yourself the most out of anybody. Because like Carter said, you know, both men are right if they can or can't. Like, whether you're trying to start a business, you know, move up, a self-improvement, something like that, you have to believe in yourself. And it's like, you were there alone. Even though you were with other people, you were alone in your mindset. And like, you had this master plan. You worked it out.
Yeah. And you didn't know if it was going to work with 100% certainty.
But you knew. No, you knew it was going to work.
Right. Let me say that everyone around me was a reinforcer. For the people that did know, it's like, it's not going to work. It's not in your control. That's what everyone's trying to tell you, right? I think that's the biggest lesson out of the story. Everyone trying to tell you what's in your control, what's not. Everything is in your control. I mean, down to the stuff that you wouldn't believe.
So you went into this, like, this mindset going into the military, like, you're going to become disciplined, right? And you're going to run away from, did you, with this story, with the way that this affected you, did you find what you were looking for?
I guess so. I really did. I got exactly what I was looking for. Though I didn't even know or understand of the existence that discipline can be a negative thing if it's leading towards building you into something you don't want to be. But in every other aspect, I got exactly what I was asking for.
So how have you taken that now? How have you shaped discipline in your life?
So, backtrack just a bit. When I first got to the SEER pre-screening, it was a little bit of tension release. I think we got there in the weekend and the sergeants weren't going to get there till the Monday. And I saw this dude in the linen room with no shoes or socks on, with his feet kicked up by the window, reading a book and a candle. And I just walked by him. And he was in, you know, like military uniform. I was so taken aback because it was almost like, dude, it's the first time I'd seen someone it seems like I would vibe with since I've gotten into this world.
Wow.
And I didn't know it until I saw him, which is why it was so like an undertaking. And I went up to him and I 100% believe to this day, and I find out through other means, through my mom saying that she was praying for me in certain ways that she never told me, but I think he was one of the very first beginning steps of helping me realize, because I wasn't using the word faith the whole time I was going through this. In my mind, even Liz and other people were like, why are you so confident? Like, it doesn't make sense. It's almost delusional. What's the difference between confident and delusional? You have a mindset that something's going to play out that hasn't happened yet.
I'd almost say delusion is rooted in the external world. So it's connected to an outcome. And confidence is connected to your being.
I think our confidence varies on our outcomes, though. Right?
It can be tested, I think, in the outcome, right, but just in the difference of it. That's kind of how I look at it.
Right. Well, then I was being delusional because I was looking for an outcome. I was looking for an outcome. I was 100% being delusional. People were taken back by it.
But you had confidence in your delusion.
Yeah. That's exactly what.
That's deep.
Yeah. All right.
I met this guy. I think he was late 20s, maybe early 30s, had like 2 kids. Also Hispanic. I was a minority, not just because of like ethnicity. I was a minority because I came from a major city. Boy, do I tell you how weird that is. We grew up here in SoCal. I mean, it just gives me so much thanks and opened my eyes. We grew up in one of the most affluent places on the planet and one of the most diverse places on the planet. Like, it's not even close. I had a ginger who I made friends with in the cafeteria look at me and say, like, he's my friend. He was cool with me, but he said it with a straight face. He said, my parents wouldn't like you. And right, I'm like confused at first. But he was kind of just warning me, saying, like, if you see him at graduation and stuff, like, don't come up to them. Like, he was trying to save me from a bullet. Because he liked me and liked who I was, but he knew his parents came from a level of, they're still going to judge you on how you look and where you're from, and not in a positive manner. That sounds absurd and sounds crazy. That's a lot of America. And
it's I've almost looked at that level of prejudice and even racism as a mental illness, but we've yet to find any sort of cure or ailment or any way to treat it.
Right.
Outside of purposeful exposure. And even then, it's like you have to be willing to accept that the way that you saw aspects of the world were incorrect.
Well, it's interesting to see how people take on what their family believes. So
he did it, right?
Well, he didn't, but at the same time, it's, my parents wouldn't like you. Don't come up to my parents at graduation. And it's like, it adds a whole nother layer.
Because he's telling you in a way of, like, I'm looking out for you. Like, I like you, so don't go put yourself in a situation I don't want you in. Wild, right? Mind-boggling. I think it's a level. It's just, we are ignorant in our own ways. I think that in particular, right, when it comes to race or, like, prejudice on you come from a certain city, it's ignorance. Education helps, take down the walls of ignorance. But it also comes from courage. If you were raised in a generation that's the norm, you have to go against the grain to not go with the flow, to essentially be like, no, I don't think like that. That's a lot easier said than done, right? That's, I think, one of the largest lessons in the story of courage, to stand up for what you believe in.
Right. Identifying what are your beliefs that stem from you, and what are the beliefs that you have been taught or have been, I guess, told to align with.
You have to be ripe enough, though, to accept that. Some people will never accept it. And, this is interesting, and I don't mean to sound morbid or, pessimistic, because I am optimistic in our generation. I'm optimistic in the future. I genuinely am, despite all the things going on. But I feel like something that Steve Jobs said once in his, like, famous Stanford college graduation speech, he said that death is one of the best inventions ever. And the reason for that is because one of them is out with the old, in with the new.
Kills ignorance. Kills ignorance.
People in the 1800s had very different beliefs than we do now. And then take 1800s, go back to the 1300s. It's different. It's different. Each generation has their own mission, and every generation does something significant. But, out with the old, in with the new.
It's true. That's funny you bring that up. I was actually thinking about that on the way here right, we all know, we've heard, the war is not against flesh, but against ideals and spirits, right? It's a spiritual war. I was thinking about that onto the mass scale of the war is against evil. And does evil ever truly die? We can take a prime example of Hitler. Hitler wasn't the major problem in the sense of what he believed in was the problem, right? He was just the vessel at which that idea came into fruition onto the planet. But someone else could have been that vessel, right? And you can change someone's mind. You could educate them and fix the problem. So that's the idea of the war is always against moralities and ideas and extremism.
Well, that's the exception, is like those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
Right. So, you know, I guess the one exception, like, I mean, to that rule would then be you have to learn from the old to bring in the new.
Yeah.
And I think that is one genuine problem, is people they're ignorant to that.
Right.
But it's interesting. Does evil ever die?
I'd argue that it never will, but just at the same breath, neither will good, because both are necessary. It's like, obviously it's a cliche, but you know, you need light, or you wouldn't know the darkness if it wasn't for light.
Right.
And some cliches are cliches because they're true, and some cliches are just born out of ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, yeah, good always comes from evil,
and vice versa. But
right.
It's like the yin and yang.
That's a good segue of like the guy I met. He was reading a book about, I don't want to get it wrong, but I want to say it was Judaism. And I literally looked at him and I said, I'm looking for answers. Right? I wasn't even using the term faith in my mind coming up into this point, even though that's what it was the whole time. I said, I'm looking for answers. I, to this day, believe that was the beginning of God, like, really speaking into me and being a part of this pivotal change in my life, where I was open to everything. And this guy was the bridge. So he was like, yeah, I'm looking at Hinduism, I'm looking at Islam, I'm looking at Christianity. I went through the books with him and I said, what is each one trying to say, and what is their intention, what is their purpose? And when I landed with the Bible, I started in Proverbs, which is all just a chapter about like wisdom. Essentially, it says how you should live life, how you should treat people and stuff like that. It connected with me the most, and 100% from there, I think, was the pivot of how I took the lessons that I learned there in the military and started to live them in my outside life. And I don't want to act like it was a night and day, like I turned into some big shot because I overcame this. Like, no, I still stumbled and made a lot of mistakes. And a lot of it was still believing that we touched on earlier, saying that, oh, everything's in your control. I like 100% agree with that and 100% don't, because you have free will, but like, you don't decide if you wake up tomorrow, right? God does. Like, everyone, no matter what you believe in, no matter denomination, you don't decide if you wake up tomorrow.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? I'm not trying to sound contradictory, but I 100% agree and disagree with you are in control. And you're also not in control with what's going on in your life. And that's what I think helped me with Christianity. When I started to read the Bible, was like, it says, don't trust your heart and don't trust your own thoughts. I've never read a book that's told me that. I've never heard a philosophy that says, don't trust yourself. Essentially, like, your nature is actually evil, but there is goodness in the world. You have pieces of goodness within you, but there's a much greater source that you need to depend on and lean on, which takes humility and a whole nother level of like thinking of how to go about life. And I think that's when my life really started to change to make me into the man I am today. Because I would stop and think, like, how many people could you say for certain would die for you?
Less than the digits on my hand, you know?
And if I'm talking in absolute terms and certainty, technically you could argue you could only say people who have already done it. Because you could have a friend tell you, I would die for you. He's not lying, or like, he may really feel that way, but until the moment comes, you don't actually know if it's going to play out that way, right? You could only argue somebody who already has died for you
would do
it. That's how much they love you. And that's when I like really internalized and understood the idea and message and like truth and wisdom found in Jesus Christ and like the idea of what was to come. And I think that's taken me a lot farther than I ever would have gone alone.
It's powerful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think God comes in your life when you're pretty much at your low, right?
Because you're willing to listen.
And, you know, I think God was with you when you were going through what you were going through with the Air Force and you're not sure you're going to get out. I mean, like you said, you didn't call it faith at the time, but it was faith.
Right.
And that just planted the seed. I think if you didn't have that experience, you probably wouldn't be feeling about this the way you
strongly, of course.
Right.
Right. I mean, how many great, in any books of like wisdom and knowledge, and it's usually the people with the most intense, like messed up lives then turn into such a strong warrior believer and like driver and voice for the faith that they then become.
Well, I don't know if you've heard this before, but if it's like, I forget who said this. Doesn't matter. He's a prominent figure. Mm-hmm. He said, like if you were going to write a story about a superhero and you wanted to make him the strongest superhero, the most resilient superhero, this guy,
Alex Hormozy,
thank you. Yeah, he said this. You've heard this.
Yes.
And he's so right. You have to go through these like tumultuous times in order to become hardened and to be able to persevere.
Right.
It's critical. And like, you know, I think that's a part of your story. So like, where's your story at now?
Oh, so I had my 21st birthday in there.
How long have you been out of the Air Force?
September of 21.
Okay, so 2.5 years.
Yeah. I actually went to go live with, I told you I recently had got out of a relationship that there was a girl I was thinking about.
How recent?
Let me put in the context of it. Wasn't that it was just like so fresh that I went into the military. It was that I'd known her since middle school, so close to like 9 years, and like closest person I've ever built a relationship with. And I think while I was in the military feeling so trapped and like lost, it was nostalgia of the good times because so many of my greatest moments were with her. Right. Wow. And I'd already broken up. So I actually had broken up with her prior. So whenever I would tell people, like, shout out Liz again, I would kind of vent to her. And she was like, you keep talking about this girl, but you're the one that broke up with her. And I was like, long story short, it was, right, no relationship is perfect. But the ideals of what was going on and stuff, I kind of recognized like, oh, I don't want to continue to live like this. But then, you know how you always have regrets or second thoughts after the fact. And especially in such a confined environment, I think it made it a lot worse. Like, I can't lie, I was having a lot of like daydreaming about her. And I think it was because of where I was and the nostalgia of the good stuff.
Did it feel like withdrawals at times?
Oh, dude. I mean, how vulnerable are we going to get? It was the deepest withdrawals I've ever had in my life. To this day, in terms of a particular person. I think even though she had no idea, like she was off with someone else, and we actually probably hadn't talked for a little bit before I even went into the military. And it wasn't that didn't exist before I went into the military, but once I was there, like I was saying, the confined spaces made me think of the great times. And she was a part of so many of them. I was having bad withdrawals. Like by the day, every day my mental was getting worse. I was becoming more in love with her because I would put the good times I had with her on a pedestal as I'm getting more and more bad days. Does that make sense? I'm clenching on harder and harder to what I remember.
Right.
So I get out, I hit her up, and I find out like, oh, she'd been there. I can't remember if she currently was or what the situation was, but there was someone else involved at the time. But I'm an honest guy. I told her like what it was and how I felt. And we had already had, like I said, close to a decade of knowing each other. We were when I was in 7th grade, she was in 6th grade. So we were friends for a really long time. We dated maybe like a good amount of those years on and off.
And that means, to me, it means a lot when you know somebody a decade from what is it, 12 to 22?
Yeah.
Because those are like your formative years of knowing somebody. They've seen you change pretty much completely into from like a boy to a man, right?
Thank you for putting that into words. I had always struggled to explain that to other people because
it's not the same. It's not the same as a 10-year relationship from 32 to 42. You are who you are by then.
Right.
You are.
100%. And it wasn't just like, because of the reality of it, even though like it stinks and I'm not proud to say it, it was an on and off relationship. So when I would explain it to other people, they'd be like, dude, like this isn't that good for you. Why are you so... Dude, it's the longest person I've ever known in my life. It is the deepest, like in terms of intimately, right? Like literally,
right.
Like intimately, right? And you can't even like relate that to other people. I recognized how rare that was the older I got, of like knowing someone at those pivotal years of your life. So I end up actually moving in with her family, because I told you it's pretty rocky where I was at, right?
Right.
And like with all due respect to her, you know, she was the best girlfriend she knew how to be, and her parents, I always am grateful that her parents like took me in and stuff, but it definitely come to find out like it wasn't a match. So I was with her and her family for 6 months. Little side gigs, I guess. I was a plumber's apprentice. I worked for Amazon. I have a whole I've done a lot of jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
You fully went on the side quests.
Yeah. I like to do. I like to get a lot of experiences. And after that, slowly, surely, God played a huge role in helping mend the relationship with my father. And slowly but surely I kind of go back and forth between my mom and dad and where I'm at now. Went into school that summer, so I was at 22, I believe, and now I'm in 2nd year at Moore Park, and I'm about to tear up this track season. People are going to know of my name because of my sport for the first time, and I'm very excited.
He a track star.
Very excited for that.
Have you always been doing track?
Yeah. I started as a distance runner. I did like LA marathons and stuff in middle school. It's actually how I met her.
How nonchalant, you know?
Wow.
And then
still did marathons and whatever. Yeah.
Hey, when you're 12, 13 years old, it's not a lot to carry. That's what I like to tell people. So it's easy to run that little body down, 26 miles or whatever. But as I got into high school, like puberty hit and got a little bit stronger, was into basketball and track. And then I got to say, I wouldn't be in school if it wasn't for athletics. Like if it was simply lecture, I don't think I could do it. I think I'd be like not too fidgety, but I don't know if there'd be enough energy to keep me, release or like societal. I don't think it'd get me to stay,
So why'd you choose to be an RN?
That's a good question. I think definitely, so my whole family is actually medical field. My brother is in medical school right now. My mom's a pharmacy tech. My dad was x-ray tech that became like a manager and stuff. It's funny. I was always against it because I didn't grow up with them a lot. Like, they had full careers and a lot of hours. But definitely, right, we all want to be financially stable. And like RNs work like 312s and make good money. My dad definitely helped me create a vision for what I wanted to do through school, because I got to be honest, man, a lot of people some people may be offended, but there's very few degrees that formal education offers that guarantees you a high paying, stable job. And they're all of them are the hardest fields that require a test after or during you graduate, right? Like medical has, and I have an NCLEX, law has the bar, or like business has, I forgot what the term is, but
it's the G
something, but they all have exams. I'm sorry to tell you, if your field doesn't have an actual exam, not that you can't make money in that field, on average, the ones that do have a really hard competitive exam, those will get you into the jobs that college people perceive that college in general will give you, when that's not really necessarily true. Right?
So do you think college is worth it
if you're in those fields? I think it's more worth it if you're in those fields. And I don't want to take away the credit of, if you're not in those fields, you're still developing as a person socially, and the connections you'll make there, I don't think like it's a complete waste compared to like, it all depends on what you would do with the time otherwise. So I think is college worth it? It's dependent on who you're asking and what they're going to do with their time otherwise. Like, I got to be honest, I kind of need to be in some type of, I'm a pretty like sporadic guy, where if I'm not in some socially stimulating schedule that is leading me somewhere, I'll just like do my own stuff.
Right. Like for me, I'm not in college. I don't have any interest at the moment. That's not to say that, 10 years down the line, I want to go and get into classes for some other field, right? But right now, I don't have any issue organizing my life in a way to benefit my music career, having this podcast, and progressing both of those in a way that I think will benefit my life. Like college is a tool,
right,
that can help you, but it's not guaranteed to do
exactly
so.
A stepping stone. Yeah. I think a lot of people get anxious about if they don't get into a high level school, whether it's generational, like parents and stuff, putting these forces on them. Dude, the whole point is getting the good job. I know a lot of people who got the good job and didn't go through school, and they still kind of feel this like insecurity that I'm not worth it, I shouldn't be here. And it's like, dude, you got it all twisted. I know a lot of people who went to elite schools didn't get a good job.
Oh yeah.
And then that may be, I may add, yet they haven't, but sad to say, statistically, there's going to be some people who never get like the job that college gives this aroma or like illusion that it will provide. It simply gives you the opportunity. It's a stepping stone.
And they'll come out like $200,000-$300,000 in debt.
Yeah, I'm good off that, man.
Ridiculous. Cop a nice little GT3 RS in debt right quick.
That's why I want to add, I love community college. Absolutely love the community college I'm into. If you guys are in any type of feng shui, Moore Park College is like 4th in the nation. And I believe it's the first community college next year. It's offering a bachelor's degree.
I wish they had that when I went there, man.
Yeah.
I really wish they did. I would have graduated from Moore Park.
Yeah.
I would have.
Love the school. It's a lot more intimate than what I hear. A lot of people when SoCal go to UCs and stuff. Student faculty ratio, the type of people you meet, the level of connections you meet. There's not this posture of, I go to a UC and it's almost like there's this pressure of like, we're here to do things and you may not have the best positive experience. I feel like this is muddy coming out, but at Moore Park, it's like everyone feels like they're given a chance to do whatever they want to do. And it doesn't matter what your background or where you come from, right? Because like competitive schools, it's like you had to be a certain way for so long.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The campus is beautiful.
It is.
Moore Park did not sponsor this episode, by the way.
But I mean, if y'all want to,
please.
But we are sponsoring Moore Park.
We are sponsoring Moore Park for sure.
We love what you guys are doing for the community, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Of when you have a community-based mindset on like helping your community, instead of I'm just gonna go to elite school and I'm gonna go be elite in an elite job. That is such a different posture to come at things and to come at life versus, I'm in a community where let's all try to educate ourselves and be a little bit better, and we can all live better lives, and I want to give back to my community. I don't feel that even though I'm not there, I've spent some time and stuff, but other people also say you don't feel that at universities. Not all, but I could say some. You don't feel like you're really giving back to.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving to them more than they're giving to you.
Yeah.
A lot of universities, it's true.
Yeah.
USC costs $80,000 tuition. Forget room and board. Forget that. Just 80 grand just to walk in the doors. They're gold plated, but
that's the posture of,
yeah.
Hey, if you didn't come from parents of wealth, you can't even be part of the club. All of those walls are taken down in community college.
Or, you know, the problem is when you didn't come from parents of wealth, and then they're encouraging you to take out $200,000-$300,000 in student loans without a plan, because college is a plan, but it's only a plan if there's like, you have that end result in mind. So I'm going to college to be an RN, to be a lawyer, to go to law school. Then I understand you're investing in yourself, but it's not something that you just do when you don't know the reason why you're doing it. You need that reason. I believe that with every aspect of your life too. You can't just be floating through your part-time job. You have to be, I'm here because I'm paying the bills, because I'm learning something, I'm gaining experience, and then taking that towards your true passion. Like you said, giving back to your community.
It's intention.
Right.
And I want to put a bow on this section of the podcast. There was, and this is why I was on my phone briefly, you put a note on your Instagram, and I had replied to it, and I was like, how do you come up with these things? And it was to the effect of, love is the language of we. I can't remember exactly what it was, but if you do remember it, please share it.
The identity of independence is weak, and the language of unity is we. We've all understood and heard before that you're stronger as a group. There's certain ethnicities, certain religions, certain groups that we can understand and look up to. Even if you don't agree with them, they have strength because they have each other's backs. I'm not a fan of the individualism, whether it's on the military or through the school system, that they try to teach you of like, no, you just have to get your own and worry about your family, because that's number one, and at whatever cost. Like, shouldn't we all get better? Why does it have to be a thing of
competition?
Well, competition, I think, breeds like success, and it brings the best out of people. You say a lot, it's like, what do you mean statistically? It's just, it does not going to work any other way. But it's like,
we're raising the baseline.
And it's almost as if you didn't get in, now you're less of a person in like every way. And it's like, dude, where did this come from? I remember reading some article saying like Harvard had the opportunity to expand its class size, and like it wouldn't cost them anymore or nothing significant, and they chose not to. And the article was saying like, we need to stop viewing education as a classism or like an elitism that only a certain amount of people are allowed to even touch or get into. Like,
yeah, knowledge is gatekept.
Right. It should be open to those who are willing to go put in the work and
seek it,
right?
But what if you don't meet that criteria?
What's the criteria?
I mean, it's what they send.
Right.
Which could be problematic. I mean, you have people at Harvard setting standards that are unrealistic, in my opinion, and you have parents enforcing their children throughout their entire life saying, you're there to go to Harvard, and the child. I mean, I've seen countless stories of people who've gone to Harvard and they're depressed. They're depressed, you know what I mean? And they beat somebody else who deserved it more. But
right.
And then it's the whole question of like, what makes you deserving?
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing. But
I believe that circles back to what Jonathan was saying earlier. I mean, you got to believe it in yourself. It's like a mix of confidence and delusion, and I think you need delusion, because I mean, another Steve Jobs quote, because I'm obsessed with Steve Jobs, but like he says, the only people who can change the world are the people who are crazy enough to think that they can.
Yes.
Right. You got to be a little bit crazy.
Yeah. And it's funny we use that terminology because as a kid we all believed. It's in everyone's nature. But then you keep getting checked by reality as you get older. Oh, become more realistic. We all know it's a code word for pessimistic, right? in every capacity of it. So
we're gonna start this tradition on the show here with our guests called Grill the Guest. We've got 3 rapid fire questions that we're going to rattle off to you to send this episode off on a high note. So the first one, what is one book you think everyone should read?
The Bible.
I knew the answer. I knew the answer.
It is the
would
most,
it be? Would that is that one book, or aren't there multiple books?
There are multiple books
exactly
in that book, but it is one cover.
It is the most popular book in the world. I mean, officially.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your guilty pleasure?
I struggled with. I mean, who does? I struggled with lust, and God helped me drop it at the December of last year, actually. So pretty recently but it's, I know you wanted a cheap, simple answer, and sorry to go take it this way, but
don't apologize.
Those 2 words shouldn't go together, right? Even though they do in terms of this feels good in the moment, but I feel shame and guilt after the fact. You don't actually like doing that. Your body might. Your flesh might, but you don't actually like doing that. Wow. So, yeah, it's
true.
Yeah.
Well, in Judaism, I'm Jewish. They have the animal soul and the godly soul. You have 2 souls within you, and you act when you do things like that just for bodily pleasure, no other reason. It's for your animal soul. And your animal souls, think about it like an animal. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, before we started recording, but just you just do because it's almost like it's a human thing to do. It's an animal thing to do. Like you said, lust. It could be even just eating, the way you're eating, doing evil things is your animal soul. But your godly soul is when you do something with a greater purpose. So that's interesting you said that, because I think lust should have, it's not just lust. You need to have lust and love. You need to have love, and love is the most important part. So that's,
spoiler alert, love beats everything.
Yes, sir.
And then last question, what's a lesson you've learned that a year ago you never even thought you'd learn?
I used to think I can learn it all. And then I realized I'm not even going to live long enough to learn 1% of what's out here. So I better become dependent on something that knows it all, which is God for me. And that takes humility. Because I think the science world tries to tell you we're the top dogs, and evolution, we kind of became out of nothing
apex predator
into the most understanding thing in this universe. And it's but as a video game character, even if they gain consciousness, they believe AI will do that, right? Listen very carefully. The video game character will never actually fully begin to understand the entire world that exists outside of its world. So why would we make the same mistake?
And then what I wanted to ask you too is looking back at that time when you were entering the Air Force with that girl, I mean, what would you tell yourself if you could sit down for yourself for 1 minute? A few sentences you can give yourself, what would it be?
Home isn't just a place. It's people and your mindset. Then your mindset will change your life.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for coming on our podcast today, Jonathan. It
immensely.
It was an amazing experience having you here. You're, like I said, forever number one, forever first guest on our episode. We are so grateful, man. And thank you to everybody who watched this. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. If you like this, please share it with a friend. And I hope this impacted you in some sort of way.
And as always, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jonathan, for being here, giving us your time, your story, and your vulnerability, your honesty. It's truly, truly amazing. And thank you for giving us that.
It was my honor, guys. Appreciate everyone listening. Appreciate you guys all, especially. Stay blessed.
Yes!
Peace.
What a great episode.